This question about the freedom of the press is underlying the very fact of the interview you're having with him.
Right.
So you might not need to ask the Navalny question, but did you feel like, are there things I shouldn't say?
I mean, how honest do you want me to be? I mean it when I say I felt not one twinge of concern for the 8 days that I was there. Maybe I just didn't. And I feel like I've got a pretty strong gut sense of things. I rely on it. I make all my decisions based on how I feel, my instincts, and I didn't feel it at all. My lawyers before I left, and these are people who work for a big law firm. This is not Bob's law firm. This is one of the biggest law firms in the world, said, you're going to get arrested if you do this by the U.S. government on sanctions violations. And I said, well, I don't recognize the legitimacy of that actually, because I'm American and I've lived here my whole life. And that's so outrageous that I'm happy to face that risk because I so reject the premise. Okay. I'm an American. I should be able to talk to anyone I want to. And I plan to exercise that freedom, which I think I was born with. And I gave them this long lecture. They're like, we're just lawyers. But that was, let me put it this way. I don't know how much you dealt with lawyers, but it costs many thousands of dollars to get a conclusion like that. Like they sent a whole bunch of their summer associates or whatever. They put a lot of people on this question, checked a lot of precedent, and they sent me a 10-page memo on it. And their sincere conclusion was, do not do this. And of course, it made me mad. So I was lecturing on the phone and I had another call with the head lawyer. And he said, well, look, a lot will depend on the questions that you ask Putin. Mm-hmm. If you're seen as too nice to him, you could get arrested when you come back. Mm. And I was like, you're describing a fascist country, okay? You're saying that the U.S. government will arrest me if I don't ask the questions they want asked? That's what you're saying? Well, we just think based on what's happened that that's possible. And so I'm just telling you what happened.
So you were okay being arrested in Moscow?
I didn't think I was
arrested in.
I didn't think for a second. I mean, maybe, look, I don't speak Russian. I'd never been there before. Mm-hmm. Everything about the culture was brand new to me. Ignorance does protect you, sort of, when you have no freaking idea what's going on. You're not worried about it. Like, this has happened to me many times. There's a principle there that extends throughout life. Mm-hmm. So it's completely possible that I was in grave peril and didn't know it. Because, like, how would I know it? I'm like a bumbling English speaker from California. But I didn't feel it at all.
But the lawyers did.
Yeah, I mean, it scared the crap out of people. You're going to... And look, you have to pay in cash. They don't take credit cards because of sanctions. And you have to go through all these hoops, just procedural hoops, to go to Russia, which I was willing to do because I wanted to interview Putin because they told me I couldn't. But then there's another fact, which is that I was being surveilled by the U.S. government, intensely surveilled by the U.S. government. And this came out. They admitted it. The NSA admitted it a couple of years ago that they were up in my Signal account. And then they leaked it to the New York Times. They did that again before I left. And I know that because 2 New York Times reporters, one of whom I actually like a lot, said, oh, you're going, and called other people. Oh, he's going to interview Putin. I hadn't told anybody that, like anybody, like my wife, 2 producers, that's it. So they got that from the government. Then I'm over there. And of course I want to see Snowden, who I admire. And so we have a mutual friend. So I got his text and come on over, and Snowden does not want publicity at all. Mm-hmm. And so, but I really wanted to have dinner with him. So we had dinner in my hotel room at the Four Seasons in Moscow. And I tried to convince him, I'd love to do an interview, shoot it on my iPhone. I'd love to take a picture together and put it on the internet because I just want to show support because I think he's been railroaded. He had no interest in living in Russia, no intention of being in Russia. The whole thing is a lie. But anyway, whatever, all this stuff. And he just said, respectfully, I'd rather not anyone know that we met. Great. The only reason I'm telling you this is because, and I didn't tell anybody, and I didn't text it to anybody, okay, except him. Mm-hmm. Semaphore runs this piece saying, reporting information they got from the U.S. intel agencies, leaking against me using my money in my name in a supposedly free country. Mm-hmm. They run this piece saying I'd met with Snowden, like it was a crime or something. So again, my interest is in the United States and preserving freedoms here, the ones that I grew up with. And if you have a media establishment that acts as an auxiliary of, or acts as employees of the national security state, you don't have a free country. And that's where we are. And I'm not guessing because I spent my entire life in that world. 33 years I worked in big news companies. And so I know how it works. I know the people involved in it. I could name them. Ben Smith of Semaphore, among many others. And I find that really objectionable, not just on principle either, in effect, in practice. I don't want to live in that kind of country. And people are like, they externalize all of their anxiety about this, I have noticed. So it's like, Russia's not free. Yeah, I know. Neither's, Burkina Faso. Like most countries aren't free, actually, but we are. We're the United States. We're different. And that's my concern. Preserving that is my concern. And so they get so exercised about what's happening in other parts of the world, places they've never been, know nothing about. It's almost a way of ignoring what's happening in their own country right around them. I find it so strange and sad and weird.
So the NSA was tracking you? Do you think CIA was? Is people still tracking you?
Look, one of the things I did before I went, just because of the business I'm in, all of us are in, and just because we live here, we all have theories about secure communications channels. Like Signal is secure, Telegraph isn't, or WhatsApp is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. You can't trust it. Okay. So I thought, before I go over here, I was getting all this, we're having all these conversations, my producers and I, about this. And I decided, I'm just gonna actually find out like what's really going on. So I talked to two people who would know, trust me. And it's all I can say. And I hate to be like, I talk to people who would know, but I can't do it. But I mean it. Mm-hmm. They would know. And both of them said exactly the same thing, which is, are you joking? Nothing is secure. Mm-hmm. Everything is monitored all the time. If state actors are involved, I mean, you can keep the, the Malaysian mafia from reading your text, probably. You cannot keep the big intel services from reading your text. It's not possible. Any of them, or listening to your calls. So, and that was the firm conclusion of people who've been involved in it, for a long time, decades, in both cases. So I just thought, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I'm not sending a ton of naked pictures of myself to anybody.
Not a ton, just a little.
Not a ton. I'm 54, dude. Probably not too many.
All right.
But you see, so I'm like, so the guys, I travel with 3 people I work with who I love, who I've been around the world with for many years, and I know them really, really well. And they all got, separate phones, and I'm leaving my other phone back in New York or whatever. And I just decided I don't care, actually. And I resent having to no privacy, because privacy is a prerequisite for freedom. But I can't change it. And so I have the same surveilled cell phone. And, I do switch them out because there it is. Because if you have too much spyware on your phone, this is true, it wrecks the battery. And no, I'm serious. It does. And it was, 5 or 6 years ago, we went to North Korea, and my phone started acting crazy. And so I talked to someone on the National Security Council who called me about this, somehow knew that your phone is being surveilled by the South Korean government. I was like, I like the South Korean government. Why would they do that? Because they want more information. They thought I was talking to Trump or whatever. So, but I could tell because all of a sudden the thing would just drain in like 45 minutes. So that's a downside.
So you keep switching phones, getting new phones for the battery life. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to do it. I'm kind of flinty Yankee type in some ways, so I don't like to spend $1,000 with a freaking Apple corporation too often. But yeah, I do.
I mean, you say it lightly, but it's really troublesome that you as a journalist would be tracked.
Well, they leaked it to Semaphore, and they leaked it to the New York Times. Look, I would even put up. Well, there's nothing I can do, so I have to put up with everything. Okay, but I would probably not be actively angry about being surveilled because I'm just so old, and I actually do pay my taxes. I'm not sleeping with the makeup artist or whatever, so I don't care that much. The fact that they are leaking against me, that the intel services in the United States are actively engaged in U.S. politics and media, that's so unacceptable. That makes democracy impossible. There's no defense of that, and yet NBC News, Ken Delanian, and the rest will defend it. And it's like, and not just on NBC News, by the way, on the supposedly conservative channels too, they will defend it. And there's no defending that. You can't have democracy if the intel services are tampering in elections and information, period.
So you had no fear. You know, your lawyer said, be careful which questions you asked. You said, I don't have.
Well, the lawyer said, no, he said very specifically, if, depending on the questions you ask Putin, you could be arrested or not. And I said, listen to what you're saying. You're saying the U.S. government has like control over my questions and they'll arrest me if I ask the wrong question? Like, how are we better than Putin if that's true? And by the way, that's just what the lawyer said. But I can't overstate one of the biggest law firms in the United States, smart lawyers we've used for years. So I was really shocked by it.